In the build-up to the new season of Doctor Who, I'm taking a look back at every episode from Season 1 and re-reviewing them all after a year of dwelling. Spoilers ahead for the whole series. Episode 4, 73 Yards, written again by Russell T Davies. This is probably the most divisive episode in the series, to be honest. Some people love it, some people hate it, and some people just don't care. It'll be obvious what I think as the video goes on. It starts with no opening credits, which immediately feels a bit weird, but quite frankly this isn't a Doctor Who episode, so that checks out. I guess I should probably explain that one. This episode is more or less a self-contained fantasy witchcraft special. Obviously the Doctor is in it, the TARDIS, Ruby, Unit and various monster threat things, but if this 45-minute story showed up in any other mystical anthology thriller series, it'd make perfect sense. I can't say this with certainty, but I do feel as though if Russell T Davies never came back to write Doctor Who, this story still would have been written and made at some point, just in a slightly different form. To an extent, it feels like a few episodes in the series don't want to be Doctor Who, in the sense we'd expect them to. And that's okay, it's such a varied show that we can have episodes like this pushing the boundaries a bit. Anywho, without doing a full plot rundown, this episode focuses on Ruby, a Doctor Light thriller that leans into the supernatural a little bit more and follows Ruby throughout the remainder of her life. There is a lot of mystery here, there is a lot that goes unexplained as well. This is where the contention comes in. Some feel the episode wasn't solid enough and left us with more questions than answers. Some feel that none of it mattered because in our timeline it didn't happen. Some feel that the story being so ambiguous was a good thing. I think that's kind of the beauty of a lot of art. 73 Yards is one of the most talked about episodes of last year, and it's because everyone got something different from it. You don't have to love it, you don't have to hate it. We don't all have to think the same, but good art can evoke emotion, thought, lasting conversations, and I think regardless of what you think of the episode, you can't not appreciate that Doctor Who can be home to such tales. Anyway, after the Doctor disappears, we see the woman for the first time. I've got to say it, this story is genuinely scary and a bit disturbing. Well, it's actually very disturbing for a different reason. This might actually be the darkest episode yet, and there's something coming that really solidifies my thought that this wasn't originally meant to be a Doctor Who episode. But the woman in the distance, always 73 yards away, sempre distance, doing those repeating hand gestures, it's scary. You know, I always thought this kind of thing was unnerving. Remember the silence in The Impossible Astronaut? They always freaked me out, because the very first time we saw one, it was looking at Amy from a distance. And I just find that looming figure kind of creepy. But what makes this woman even scarier is that when people talk to her, they scream and run away. And before I start talking about why that might be, I do just want to appreciate the episode for the way it looks. Call me shallow, but looks matter. Seriously though, I mentioned before in another video that one episode in particular looks phenomenal in this series. Yeah, I mean, it's most of them, but it's this is the one I was meaning. This is the best looking one. 73 Yards is insanely well shot. This and Boom look better than most movies you'll see nowadays, to be honest. Truly incredible cinematography and direction, and that's one of the biggest reasons this story is so scary. The woman is shot in such a way that she maintains the mystery and fear factor throughout, even after Ruby has sort of grown attached to her. It's such a beautifully shot short film in my eyes. I have my opinions about whether TV needs to look as good as blockbuster movies, and that trying to do that actually killed regular TV, but hey ho, if they're gonna do it, I may as well enjoy it. This episode doesn't further the overarching plot of the series at all, and I've heard people say it's filler for that reason. I mean, I guess outside of the little interaction with the woman early on, not the scary one, but the one who's also an ambulance tea lady and a futuristic ship captain. Ruby kind of recognises her, but outside of that, yeah, it doesn't really further the plot much, but okay, filler? Sure, why not? I don't care. This episode gives us a much needed crash course on Ruby Sunday herself. It puts her in a situation that spans her entire life, and we see that even without the Doctor, without hope, and without family, she still does the right thing. She's still a hero, she's dedicated, she's special. Even if none of that actually ended up happening to the Ruby we continue the journey with, it is still her character and personality that acted in that way under those circumstances. We learnt much needed information about her in this. Given the reduced episode number this year, it was vital that we got to know Ruby a little bit more in this way. And on the subject of this being heavily Ruby focused, Millie Gibson gives her best performance by far in this episode. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first one she filmed as well, which is just insane. Truly a remarkable performance here, and being able to lead an episode like this before even properly getting into a character is astounding. One last thing about the whole filler episode thing, I completely disagree with that as a complaint in any situation. Filler episodes are needed to further character development and heighten the heavier story episodes. If every episode was a heavy story progression, the series just wouldn't work, especially if it's a show like Doctor Who where they go on random adventures all the time. Hell, even episodes like the Fly one from Breaking Bad are excellent filler episodes, though I know a lot of people don't agree with that statement. I guess it's just more about how you perceive the show you're watching. Are you just there to find out the ending, or are you there to appreciate the story being told, the characters' journeys, the themes presented, and overall just experience the art as intended? If you're not going in with that mindset and you just want to see the finale of any given show, then yeah, you're not going to like filler episodes. But that really just means you don't like the show you're watching. If a fun side episode upsets you that much that you don't want to watch it or you think it was a waste, then just stop watching, quite frankly. This show isn't for you, otherwise you'd enjoy those weird offshoot ones. Anywho, that weird grievance aside, I'll zoom through a couple of things before getting into the real meat of what I think 73 Yards was about, which really is why everyone's here. Every character seeing and talking to the woman was great. Being scared of Ruby, looking at her with disgust, her mum looking her out the house, it was incredibly powerful and so well done. Ruby getting older was a bit of a shock, but a welcome one. I really enjoyed how this story was a little bit different. Of course, it was at that point that I realised this was an alternate reality story. I thought maybe when she was 25 they could still bring it back, but after that, yeah, I realised that this was not going to be the world that we would continue to exist in. The scene in the pub alone was brilliant. All the Albion stuff, chilling and again really well directed. I do have to say though, there is one major thing that I felt was out of place. On one hand I like it and fully understand it, but on the other I feel there must have been other ways to do it. It's Roger Ap Gwilliam being a rapist. Look, if this was anything other than a family show, I'd be fine with it. I don't mean I'm fine with that, I mean I'm fine with the story telling this part, like this being part of the story. In the context of this episode alone, it was chilling and so powerful. Horrible, but in the way that it needed to be. We needed to understand that Roger Ap Gwilliam was a diabolical piece of shit. However, it was already established he wanted to launch nukes, and the Doctor already said he was evil. I just think in a family show that part could have been left out, and we'd have still understood that he was a bad guy. It was certainly a choice, and again makes me think that this script may already have existed before being turned into a Doctor Who story. That said, for such a mature topic in an otherwise friendly and light-hearted TV show, I have to say they handled it really well. It wasn't much, and it didn't take up a lot of the episode itself, it was never the focus, but if the goal was to make the audience hate Gwilliam as much as possible, between the script, directing, and insane performance from Gwilliam's actor, I'm sorry, I'm not Welsh enough to even try pronouncing his real name without getting it wrong, and I'd rather just not try and not offend anyone. It truly worked and made for a terrifying few moments whenever he was on screen. And I guess to an extent, someone calling him a monster, maybe children aren't going to clock exactly what's going on, so it's not like super inappropriate. I don't know, it felt needlessly dark. Mind you, as an adult watching an episode of TV that's not necessarily Doctor Who, it would have been fine, so I'm torn on this. Certainly isolated within this episode, it worked well. But the big question everyone came away from the episode with was, who was the woman? Well, I'm going to say this first, and I hope anyone who watches this can understand what I mean. It does not matter in the slightest who the woman was. It doesn't matter what she said to the people that scared them so much. It does not matter at all. Now I know that's going to be hard for a lot of people to accept, and I get that. But this is an intentionally ambiguous story, to an extent. The story itself is airtight and told to completion. However, certain elements of that story weren't expanded to completion, and that's okay. This was a story about Ruby Sunday and her life, her fears, her motivation, her willpower. The woman was just part of that story and helped to tell it. But it was not about her, and we never needed to know who she was. What makes the story so unique is that there are a million ways you could interpret this woman, what she was saying and what happened at the end. So with all that in mind, here's how I interpret it. I think the woman was the embodiment of fear. She isn't so much a person. In fact, she isn't really there. She can be seen sometimes, sure, in a way that we can kind of see our own fears, but we don't want to. Like the perception filter is always described, you can always sort of see it, but it's like you don't want to. Does anyone really want to acknowledge their fears? No, of course not. And sometimes when you do, they're utterly terrifying. I know that when I'm just thinking or listening to music, I can start thinking of things that scare me. Mainly because I want to write a horror film and I need to work out things that are utterly terrifying, but in that I do try to go deep into the thoughts that make my skin crawl, and as soon as I fully identify them, I properly get freaked out and I have to think of other things. And to me, I saw that woman as being the embodiment of that. Always there, but at a distance. A safe distance. The fear itself won't hurt you, but it'll never stop making you feel weird. However, approach it fully and shit goes haywire. I don't think the woman was saying anything to those people to make them run. I think they simply just interacted with pure, unfiltered fear, and it scared them. I quite like this thinking specifically because most people just ran, but Kate Stewart, who has seen some insane things, probably very scary things, she kept composed. She just looked at Ruby with contempt and walked away. I think this is quite powerful. Hell, even Ruby's mum, after calming down, was able to keep composed afterwards. Almost like that maternal instinct of hers kept her level-headed enough to stay calm after the initial reaction. Not something that can be said for anyone else who encountered the woman because they don't have any stronger connection to Ruby themselves. I think this idea of fear works well because seeing the woman up close makes people run, but Ruby, who's always at a distance, just has all of her fears slowly come true. Abandonment over and over and over again. Anyway, the story itself, I believe, is as simple as what the pub folk were talking about. It's Mad Jack, and by breaking the circle they release the spirit of Mad Jack into the last person thought about by he who broke the circle. I think it's straightforward in that regard. I think William was always going to be awful, but the spirit of Mad Jack possessing him possibly made him even more dangerous. In terms of the ending, I see a lot of people saying that the woman was old Ruby all along. I even saw someone saying that the woman being played by a different actor to old Ruby was intentional misleading and they hated the episode for that. I ended up having an argument with them on Twitter and they blocked me. They couldn't fathom that this episode wasn't exactly what they thought it was. It is ambiguous. There is no definite answer to all of this. That is the point of the show. So if you have a theory that the woman was Ruby, but something like the casting makes that seem unlikely, you cannot try and stand on a high horse and decide the filmmakers were wrong because you didn't understand it. It just means that maybe you need to consider a different theory. I'm not even saying the old woman wasn't Ruby. My personal thinking is that Ruby, when she died, got to see through the eyes of the woman and influence her just a bit, just enough to make a difference. She wasn't the woman, but she was briefly in control. To me that makes a lot more sense. However, none of it matters because I could be wrong. In fact, I'm going to say I'm 100% wrong. We're not meant to know what all the ambiguity means. Hell, I even doubt Russell T Davies knows, and that's the point. We don't need to. It's a folklore story come to life. I think what makes the episode so great and so timeless, and what will make it go down in history as one of the best in years to come, is that every single person is going to get something different from it. And I think that's awesome. It's just a shame that the public perception of the episode is so tainted because a very loud minority of people wanted definite answers and weren't able to appreciate the art as intended. I love this one, if that wasn't already obvious. I think it's the best directed episode by far, the most creative, and one of the strongest scripts. If Doctor Who continues to have tales like this, I will be a very happy man. Truthfully, I have no notes. 10 out of 10. Thanks for watching, if you made it this far, of course. I'm aware this video might not align with everyone's opinions, but hey, that's okay, right? Everyone's allowed to have different opinions, so getting angry in the comments is there's no need. If you enjoyed this, feel free to subscribe, and if you like me or my videos, then be sure to check out my other channel in the description. I've got a video on Dot and Bubble coming very soon, but until then, stay wibbly, stay wobbly, stay timey-wimey, and I'll see you in the next one.